Wednesday? Tuesday? Wednesday? One of the two. I think it's Wednesday. Anyway. Yeah, it is Wednesday, okay. My calendar is always screwed up, just mostly. So, what am I yammering about this morning? Well, while I was dropping off a JB Hunt trailer at a receiver, I discovered on the back door a decal that somehow I had missed during my pre-trip yesterday when I was picking the unit up from a drop lot to go and take it to get live loaded. And the decal in question, for reference, said something to the effect of Muslims are the true soldiers of Jesus the Messiah. Read the Quran for truth. Now, I could have just sort of glossed over it, but this needs to be talked about for a couple of reasons. And none of them, you might be surprised, have to do with the religious nature of that statement. Because let me be clear, I don't care if you're Muslim, I don't care if you're Christian, I don't care if you're atheist, I don't care if you're Hindu or Buddhist or Shinto or you believe in the Greek gods or the Roman pantheon or this flying spaghetti monster. I really don't care. Your beliefs are your business. Simple as. However, we no longer live in a society where people can make a statement like that and not expect to receive consequences in some capacity, especially depending on which portion of the country you happen to be traveling in at any given time. The same is also true for stickers supporting Trump, or being pro or anti-abortion, yada yada. You name, pick your political affiliation, pick your religious statement. There's a consequence for having that raised, emblazoned across your vehicle in some capacity. Most folks will look at you and either they'll agree with you silently, they'll silently hate you, or they won't care. And those are the only real three options. But that's not why I'm choosing to talk about this. The real reasons I'm choosing to talk about this is, number one, JB Hunt trailers, despite being quote-unquote public utilities for a pool of contractors, not just JB Hunt employees, they're not public property. These trailers do not belong to us, the contractors, even though for 24, 48, 36, however many hours we have that trailer, it is in our possession and it is our responsibility for that time. We are responsible for making sure it gets properly inspected, for calling in any issues, and if necessary, bringing it to a repair location so it can be serviced. We're also responsible for making sure that it's loaded correctly, that it's not leaking, that the product isn't causing it any damage, that we're parking it safely, all those things. We are responsible to that degree. However, that does not give us as contractors license to utilize someone else's property to make a statement. Now you see folks scrawling on the backs of trailers in the dirt and dust and grime on their doors, Trump 2024, Jesus saves, things of that nature that overall, more or less, are innocent statements because they're being drawn in grime. And a good rainstorm or a trip through a truck wash or even some Windex and some paper towel takes it right off. No muss, no fuss, no problem. All that had to happen was, 2 minutes of elbow grease at most for the simple solution. But when you're going to apply a decal to someone else's property, you are violating the owners of that property, their right to free speech, because you are using their equipment to speak for them in a manner that may or may not be consistent with their company values, their personal values, or any other statement they may have made for or against, or even neutral to whatever that decal happens to say. And for the record, and this is honestly true, if I had seen a Jesus Saves decal or a Trump 2024 decal or an AOC Superfan decal or whatever kind of other decal that had no business being on a JB Hunt trailer in any capacity, I also would have removed it, because that is someone else imposing their speech on an entity for which they do not have the right to speak. Because as contractors, we are obligated to represent the entity for whom we are contracting to the best of our honest, key phrase here, our honest ability. That means not using their property to make our statements. That includes supporting Trump, that includes whether or not you're Christian, that includes whether or not you like Biden or AOC or whoever. Now, on my trailer, I've got some funny decals. My favorite is 0 to 60 eventually, and I made a video about that a year or so ago when I found that decal, put it on my trailer, because it's just a very silly decal. I've also got one on my trailer that says, just because you're offended does not mean you're right. Now, that's my trailer. I own that trailer. That trailer is my property, which means I have the right to make any statement with that trailer I choose to, which means I can have a Trump 2024 sticker on her, I can have a Trump 1 2020 decal, I can have an AOC Superfan decal, I can have a Biden Will Save Us All decal. I can do whatever I want with whatever decal I want on my property, because it's my property. I own it. Therefore, I have the right to make any speech decisions with that property, because it is, as it is my property, it is an extension of my right to freedom of speech and expression. Okay, that is First Amendment protected, because it's my property. Just because the First Amendment covers you individually as a citizen or even a resident of the United States, that protection does not extend to you speaking on behalf of another entity in a manner in which they do not or may not agree with. Okay? That's the core point I want to get across here. Your property, your choices, your problems. Not your property, not your choices, and it will be your problem if you get caught doing it, because you may lose access to that property. Now, I have no idea if a previous driver put that decal on. I have no idea if someone came by last night while I was parked and put it on. I really have no idea. All I know is that I removed it because it has no place on that JB Hunt trailer. And the second reason why that's important is because such a statement could have an unintended consequence of making any given driver or employee of JB Hunt a target for any sort of aggression or potentially injurious activity to which they may be unwittingly subjected to, because someone else decided to put that decal on that trailer and they didn't catch it during their inspection. Because if I missed it and I did a full walk around, that certainly means that someone else could miss it also. And that means someone else could get hurt by that decal, especially if they go into an area that's, shall we say, a little more red in the neck. The same is also true if someone has a Trump 2024 decal on a trailer and they go into an area where people are very blue in the hair. Because that's the society we live in right now. Your statements can get you targeted for aggression. And if you're making a statement on behalf of someone else without their knowledge or their consent, you are exposing someone else to injury, potentially getting them injured because you wanted to make a statement and you wanted to grandstand and you wanted to spread some message on someone else's property. It doesn't matter if it's quote unquote the right message or quote unquote the correct statement to make. You know, if you put an abortion is murder decal on someone else's trailer, you are speaking for them and exposing the driver or an employee of the company that owns that trailer to backlash which they had no knowledge of, no acceptance of, or consent to. So you got to be mindful of that. Even though you have the right to free speech, you do not have the right to speak for somebody else, and you also have to understand that your right to speak, if you impose it on somebody else, you are exposing them to injury. Either from you imposing upon them your statement or your speech or your values, or because someone else sees what you did and decides to be aggressive to the driver or the employee, and now that person ends up in an angry mob somewhere without realizing that they had any problem in the first place. Which is also why we should be very thorough in our pre-trips, but also why, it's if it's not your property, keep your hands off it unless it's your job to touch it. Don't put decals on someone else's trailers. Don't do that. You can get someone hurt. You can get hurt. You could lose access to those trailers. Like if I had put that decal on this trailer, I would be exposing myself to being permanently removed from the ability to pull for JB Hunt ever again. Now, because I own my own trailer, that's not a huge problem. But if you're not someone who owns your own equipment, that could be a real problem. That could put you out of business, especially if word gets around that you're doing that. Other carriers that might do lease operations or power only solutions like that, you might end up blacklisted. That's a real consequence, because no motor carrier right now wants to be on the wrong side of a dispute or a statement, because that can have real financial consequences. That can cost people customers. That can cost people jobs. That is the world we live in, and we have to think before we act. Which in this day and age is apparently extremely difficult, considering how much stupidity is flying around the planet right now, especially in the Western Hemisphere. But anyway, that's my little diatribe for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you down the road.